Hi, I'm Wendy, and welcome to the RN Forgot podcast. This is where truth meets health and wellness. But as a public health official and registered nurse, I am going to discuss the myths, the facts, and give you some essential tips to have a more balanced life in the health realm, the physical realm, mental, emotional, and spiritual realm, and of course, even financially. Take this journey with me and let's dive in. See you soon. Toodles.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to my podcast. Yay! This is the very first interview that I am doing with my very good friend, Shanae. Um, the first interview for the podcast and the first of many. But Shanae Wakefield Brown is a friend of mine. She and I used to go to the same church together, and she is into research. So I wanted to bring her on so that we could discuss research in the communities of color. So without further ado, here is Shanae. Yay! Welcome, welcome, welcome. So
Thank
how are
you.
you today?
I'm doing well, and yourself?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. So, as I was telling all of my listeners and viewers that I wanted to bring you on to talk about research in the communities of color. And can you give me, I know your background a little bit, but share with the listeners and viewers what your profession is and how you actually got into research?
Yes. As Wendy mentioned, I am Shanae Wakefield Brown. I am the owner and site director of Revival Clinical Research in Orlando and Kissimmee, Florida. How did I get into research? So, I am a graduate of the University of Central Florida with a degree in cardiopulmonary sciences. That degree led into a career as a respiratory therapist. So I was a respiratory therapist for 4 years in a pediatric vicinity, pediatric hospitals in Orlando and also in Atlanta. Working night shift, which was not my cup of tea, but of course, being a newbie in the industry, as many of you know or may not know, you have to start at the bottom. So, working night shift was the shift that I worked for 4 years. Anyone that knows me knows that I am not a night person, but of course, to pay the bills, you have to do what you have to do. So, while I was working in Atlanta at the Children's Hospital there, um, I was praying to God, Lord, help me to find a different job where I don't have to work nights, but at the same time, not using my career that I or my degree that I had gone to school for. So I was at work one night looking internally at positions, and I came across a position for an asthma research coordinator. Um, During my time reviewing the requirements, it said that you needed to have a master's in research. You needed to be a part of these research organizations, and I didn't fit the master's degree, nor did I have membership to these research organizations that it said was required. So I applied anyways. I said either they can say yes or no. So I said, I don't know about research, but I do know about asthma. And this position was for an asthma research coordinator. So I applied, and the manager at the time reached out to me via email and say, hey, since you're working night shift, why don't you come down to the research department and talk to me in the morning? I think it was a few days later to talk about your interests. So I went down, had a conversation, and I was brutally honest. I said, I don't know anything about research, but being that I'm a respiratory therapist, I know a good bit about asthma. So she said, don't worry. You don't need to worry about the master's degree. You don't need to worry about being affiliated with these research organizations. She said, I have someone that will train you on research. So I said, thank you, Lord, because that was a prayer for some time for me to be able to go to from nights to days. And if you don't know, most research jobs are Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, 9 to 5 situations. So back in 2010 is when I started my career in research as a asthma coordinator. So I was coordinating research trials for asthma patients, and then eventually started coordinating trials in cancer and neurology while I was in Atlanta. Got married, had my first daughter in Atlanta, and wanted to move back to Florida because this is where I'm from and my husband. So I took a coordinator position at a hospital here in Orlando. Um, did that for about a year and a half and wanted to further my career. And so I took a position as a research monitor. And what a research monitor does is they go to different sites that participate in research studies to monitor the data to make sure that they're enrolling patients that should be enrolled in these trials and make sure that the data that's being collected is indeed accurate. And so I did that for about 5 years as a monitor. And then I was an auditor for almost 2 years, where I wasn't an FDA inspector, but I worked on behalf of the pharmaceutical companies where they would send us out to different sites to audit the data that is being collected at the sites. Because in research, a term that you hear a lot of times is make sure that you are audit ready at all times. So that was my job, is to make sure these sites were audit ready in case the FDA came knocking at their door. So yeah, I was an auditor for 2 years, and then so in that time span of being a monitor and an auditor, that was 7 years of travel for me, um, from traveling all over the United States and Canada, going to various research sites, monitoring their data, auditing the sites. And during that 7 years, it gave me a knowledge of how to run a site. Um, I asked questions. And then meeting all these different site owners, I said, Lord, this is something I can do myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to a place where I had to step out on faith. And a good dear friend of both of ours spoke to me, and she said, Shanae, I'm tired of hearing you speak on what you want to do. When are you going to step out and do it? So 2022 is when I stepped out on faith and said, you know what? I'm going to open a research site. And she told me, she said, if you take one step, God will order the next. And he did just that. And he continues to do just that. So it was all God's timing. My kids were younger then, so I couldn't really do it when I wanted to do it. So the opportunity came for me to do that in 2022. And so here we are in 2025, going on, we're in year 3 now. So that's how I got my start into research. Many people don't know about research, but once you introduce to it, you're like, wow, this is a whole different world that I don't even know about.
So that's good. I mean, yes, I do know. Like I said, I know your story, but it is a fantastic story. One of definite trusting God and stepping out and doing it, what it is that you wanted to do in your heart, and you, excuse me, looked around and you saw what other people were doing, and you were like, wait a minute, I can do this too. That's that I believe in exposure. Lets you know when you see other people doing things and you look and you like, wait a minute, I can do that too. So that's that rule of exposure. But you mentioned that people don't know about research. So why is research important, especially first of all, why is research important? But more importantly, why is it important to communities of color?
Yes. Research is so very, very vital to all of us, no matter what our ethnic background. Most people don't know this is that every medication that is approved, whether it's sold in Walgreens or your doctor's writes you a prescription, at some point that medication had to go through a clinical trial or research study, which means participants had to sign up to be a part of this study so that the pharmaceutical companies can get the data that they need to present to the FDA to say, this is why this medication works, and this is how we know that it's safe. So it's important for research to take place so that we can get new therapies available to us. It's even more important in minorities because I will tell you 70% of research participants are Caucasian and only 30% are minorities. So there's work to do in ethnicities across all ethnicities, but particularly Black and Brown. So, for instance, there's all kinds of medications that are readily available to us, but a lot of times the data that they have on these medications um, are specific to people of Caucasian background because those were the participants that participated in the studies. So they know how the drug metabolizes in Caucasians, but it could metabolize very differently in an African American or Hispanic person. So the data that they have, it's a good piece of information, but it's not everything that they need to know to be able to give more information about the drug and understand more how it works or doesn't work in our bodies.
Yeah, I know I always tell people the reason why, so maybe the last 20 years or so, probably the last 30 now, 30, maybe 40 years, they really started doing a lot of research on women and women's health issues. And probably the last maybe 50, 75 years now, African Americans, Black Americans. But even still, with that, it's been limited, right? It's been limited to um, areas that, you know, for instance, a BMI. BMI, the basal metabolic rate, your basal metabolic index, is a measurement that is based upon really Caucasian, Anglo-Saxon, white males, their body type and their body shape. So if you put that next to a bodybuilder, a black man that is a bodybuilder that's very muscular, his BMI would show that he's overweight, but there it's not counting the muscle, the muscle mass. Whereas you would have a white man the same weight and height, they would not it would not equate. It wouldn't be equal. So I often tell people that research is good for us so that we can get the appropriate treatment, the appropriate medications for the ailments and disease processes that we as a people have. So speaking to that, there have been, I understand, and I know you understand why, excuse me, a lot of people of color don't want to have research done. They don't want to be a part of a study, even though these are ways that we can get the correct medication. So we would have known years ago that certain cardiac medications cause angioedema to had a higher propensity of causing angioedema to black people. But people say, "Oh no, I don't want to be a part of the study because, well, you know about this experiment and that experiment." So what do you say to people um, that say that they don't want to be a part of an experiment because they already experimented on us enough? What do you say to
It,
that?
yes, and I hear it all the time. And I chuckle, but not negatively. I chuckle because how I present it to patients all the time, and I'll just explain it here. Anytime you go to a doctor, no matter what it's for. Say, for instance, you have hypertension. They'll put you on a medication. Most of the time, we just go and fill it, take it, and hope for the best. A lot of times, we don't even read the packet, the pamphlet that comes with the prescription. We just get it, open it, and take it, and hope for the best. So a lot of times it's still a trial at the end of the day, even though the medication is FDA approved. And the reason it is a trial is because a lot of times the doctor could prescribe you, I'm just going to throw a medication out there, amlodipine. That's a hypertension medication. You don't know how your body is going to tolerate it. You could end up having tachycardia, meaning your heart is racing. It could lead to other things, and it's all because of this medication that your body doesn't tolerate. You don't know that until you try it out, which is a trial. So when you call your doctor and say, "Hey, doctor, I can't take this amlodipine, for instance, anymore because it's causing my heart rate to increase," he says, "Okay," he or she will say, "Well, let's try you on this." Again, that is another trial because they don't know if it's going to work for you. If it may not even lower your blood pressure. So if it's not lowering your blood pressure, which is what it's supposed to do, we've got to try something else because obviously it works for some and it lowers their blood pressure. And also it may not cause increased heart rate in others. So it's still a trial, regardless of how you look at it. And what I also tell patients is yes, there are things that have affected brown and black people in the past that gives research a negative view, and we'll never forget. But since then, they have put in institutional review boards and ethics committees that are put in place to protect patients from that are participating in clinical trials so that people aren't targeted because of their socioeconomic status. They're not targeted because of their race. And these programs and guidelines are put in place to protect us. So, from my experience, I've been in research for 15 years now, and I can rest assured that things are put in place, properly put in place to protect those of us from not being a part of something that we don't have the information about or not properly informed. Every clinical trial that is conducted, patients have to sign an informed consent. The informed consent is the first thing you do before you do anything. You can't even take a patient's blood pressure before you properly in, give informed consent. That informed consent is going to tell you why you're doing the study, how many patients they need in the study, the risk that could be involved with participating in the study, why you should participate in the study, the phone numbers to the institutional review board if you feel that something is unethical. The informed consent gives you every piece of information that you need to know about participating in this trial. And so those things have been put in place. And I want to say the Institutional Review Board was created back in 1974. After the Tuskegee event took place. So that's been in place for quite some time now. And to be honest with you, I've not heard of any recent research issues that have taken place where patients were not properly informed of research studies. So, yes, it is. Most people are afraid, but there are things in place to protect. And what I tell a lot of people is the good thing about being in a research study as opposed to just going to Walgreens and picking up a prescription that the doctor prescribes. A lot of times, a doctor may prescribe a medication to you, but you won't go back for lab work maybe 6 months
Mhm.
to a year later.
Mhm.
So you really don't know if the medication that they prescribe has caused any changes from your baseline. Whereas when you do participate in a research study, there's data being gathered on you at baseline before you even take any medication. So the doctors will know your EKG status, your lab status. They'll do a physical, so they'll know what your baseline is before going on the medication. And then if you qualify for the trial and you're put on the medication, you're coming into that office once a month for urinalysis, blood work, EKG. So they're going to know pretty quickly whether there's been a change from your baseline due to the medication. And at that time, the doctor will evaluate and say, maybe the risk outweigh the benefits, or the benefits outweigh the risk, vice versa, and decide what's the proper mechanism for that patient at that time. So when you are in a research study, you are followed a lot more closely than you are from your PCP. And I know a lot of patients, they prefer research studies over their PCP because they get to see their doctor once a month and not be charged.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is what people don't understand, is that they do see the doctor more frequently. They are getting more checkups. They are being closely observed because they want to make sure that they know any side effects, any changes in their blood pressure, anything off of the baseline. And then there's a record. I think I shared with you. I years ago when I lived in Maryland, I was a nurse taking care of patients that were in a research study, as I did with your clinic. But there are stipulations, even as the nurse, that you have to go through. You have to learn and understand what it is and how you are not interfering with the research. So you have to draw blood in a certain way at a certain time. All of those things, as you well know. So I have not heard of any negative things out of research either. Of course, there are times when research studies are done, and unfortunately, sometimes people are very ill or that kind of thing, but that's a small percentage. And that's why people are very closely monitored when they are in a research project, in a research study, excuse me. So speaking about those, I don't want to use the word that I'm thinking, but speaking about those unexpected outcomes, um, and some of the things that have occurred in the Black community prior to the International Review Board. As you stated, that is the review board is they are people that look at everything that's in the research before you can even get a research project approved. The International Review Board, it analyzes every step to make sure that there is nothing underhanded, untoward that could possibly occur. So prior to the International Review Board, we know that there were a lot of atrocities done to people of color. So that is what was put in place to help prevent those. And as you stated, and I agree, I have not heard of any since the IRB. So we already know about the Tuskegee, we know about Henrietta Lacks, and the fortunate thing is those families have sought out um, reparations for the damages done. Unfortunately, we don't know about all of the other ones, or it's not publicly known. But I know there is one that you were speaking about if you wanted to touch base on that one.
Yes. So there were birth control studies that were conducted in Puerto Rico back in the mid 1950s. And during that time, they sought out uneducated, low income Puerto Rican females to give these birth control pills to, not informing them of the risk of these birth control pills. And a lot of the women passed away, but Most of it is because they weren't informed. If you were informed that this birth control pill could cause this, that, or the other, then you at that time make the decision to say, no, the risk outweigh the benefits. So no, thank you. But these ladies were not informed of the risk. And of course, you are presenting them with, oh, here's this new way to prevent yourself from becoming pregnant. A lot of women at that time were, of course, they're like, yeah, sure. If this is something that's going to cause me not to get pregnant when I don't want to be, then yes, I will take it. But unfortunately, they were not informed of the risk. And again, this is all prior to the institutional review board being in place. But yes, there are events that have taken place, unfortunately. But the FDA, the Institutional Review Board, have things in place to prevent these types of things from happening again.
And let me just stress too that the IRB, the International Review Board, is a separate entity from any government entity. They are
Yes,
separate. They do not connect with any government. They are not affiliated with any government. They are not affiliated with FDA. They're not billionaires. They're not any of those things. So this
they
is,
are community members.
yes, they
Is
are
what
people in the community, everyday people that sit on this board to represent the people to make sure that nothing untoward occurs.
Yes, and when you're doing these applications for studies, they ask you, you're not targeting pregnant women, you're not targeting prisoners, you're not targeting homeless people. So they do a good job from what my experience since I've been in research to prevent targeting.
Yeah, I'm actually working on something about informed consent. I'm very passionate about informed consent, having worked with post-operative patients, um, and just being in the healthcare area so long. I know sometimes patients agree, and the doctors talk to them and tell them things, but they get it conceptually. But after the fact, they like, oh, I didn't know it was going to be like this. You know what I mean? So I'm just working on something to help them to ask the right questions so that they feel as though they are fully informed.
And one of the things we do, and most research sites do this, even if a patient presents to us wanting to participate, we give them the informed consent in advance. They can take it home, read it, review it with a family member, ask the doctor questions before they decide, yes, I want to participate. So they're not put under any pressure to make a decision at that time that, oh, yes, I have to say yes to this research study. So a lot of times it is they might need a family member to explain it in more detail so that they can understand it. Because we try to present the study on a level. I think informed consent, the standard is it has to be on a fifth grade level for reading purposes. But
Mhm.
of course, people need time to think about it and, of course, talk to family members. So I know that is helpful and one of the things that we do at our site.
And it's good that you don't make them feel rushed. You give it to them. You say, hey, you can go home, read it, think about it, talk to your doctor, get family involved. That's a good thing because then people can't say, well, I did not know.
Correct.
So you have a research clinic yourself, and you are thriving there. So how can people get into a research study, and what type of studies do you do?
So, yes, I have a research site here in Orlando in Kissimmee. Currently, we are offering clinical trials with fatty liver. We have a heart failure device trial. We have an asthma study that's ongoing. We have upcoming two hyperlipidemia trials. And we also have a chronic spontaneous urticaria trial, which is chronic hives. Those are the studies that we're currently offering, but you can always reach out to us at any time, because even though we may not have a trial for your condition today, doesn't mean that we won't in the near future. Oh, and let me not forget, we do have studies for ulcerative colitis. So even if you don't have any of the conditions, and maybe you know someone who does, who could benefit, you can definitely send them our way. We can be found at www.revivalclinical.com, or you can contact us by phone 407-594-5444. One of the things I did not mention, Wendy, which is very, very important, anytime you participate in a clinical trial, you do not pay anything out of pocket. So all of your visits to the doctor are covered. You don't pay anything out of pocket. Your insurance is not billed for your visits to the doctor. So you don't have to have insurance to be screened and participate in studies. For instance, our ulcerative colitis studies requires colonoscopies. You don't pay for the colonoscopies. You are not billed for the colonoscopy. So all your lab work, everything that is done for the clinical trial are covered. And in addition to it, you do get compensation for your time and participation in the trial. So, I tell people, especially those with no insurance, some treatment is better than no treatment.
Yes, I agree.
Um, so I would rather, at least if for anything, be screened and get the lab work, just so you
Hmm.
know
Hmm.
what's going on with you inside.
Yeah.
So yes, research trials offer the benefits of hopefully healing you of your disease, and also free healthcare is what I call it. And also you get compensation. And another bonus is for patients who don't have transportation. We provide transportation.
Yay. That's
So
really
it's
good.
a win-win. But yes, you can learn more about what studies we have on our website. We can be found on Facebook and Instagram. And we're also in the process of going through a rebrand, rename. So it's in the process. It's all going to fall under this Clinical One research umbrella. So stay tuned for more information about the rebrand.
Okay, so
Yes.
www.revivalclinical.com,
Mhm.
and on Facebook it's Revival Clinical. So if they go onto Facebook and follow you and IG, correct? Follow
Yes.
Revival Clinical. Once the brand name changes, they'll still already be in connected, right?
Correct. Yes.
So that's a good thing right there. That's a good thing. And repeat your phone number again, please.
It's 407-594-5444. And also, too, I want to mention, say, for instance, we don't have a research trial that's being offered for your condition. There's other research sites in the area. You can Google research trials in my area to find research studies that are being conducted for whatever condition you may want to participate in a trial for. So, also, clinicaltrials.gov is another resource. You can literally go on clinicaltrial.gov, in the search, type in your condition, and it will show you studies that are recruiting for your disease and where you can find those studies, which research sites are participating. And
And
that's
some
clinicaltrials.gov.
a lot of times, whatever condition or disease process you have, excuse me, you're getting medication, you're getting treatment. So if you can't if you can't afford your medication, you lost your insurance or something, you can get the medication that you need for that condition to be treated while you're going through the trial.
And that's very important. You said that. I hear that more often than not with patients that I'm supposed to be on this medication, but because of insurance, I'm not taking it or I'm not on anything. And it's like, okay, let me find a trial for you so that you can be on medication and not have to pay for it or worry about the burden of not having insurance and not being able to afford it.
Yeah, because sometimes you just need to take a medication for a short time period and then you can get off of it. So the clinical trials do work.
They do. And that's the rewarding part when we have patients come in and they're like, I've taken so many different medications for this and nothing has worked. And now I finally have something that is working for me. So those are the rewards of being a part of this and seeing the success stories and or being a part of a research study and then one day seeing the medication advertised on the commercial, you can be like, yeah, oh, I was a part of that.
Yeah, that's how I felt with Tamiflu because that was the research study that I was a part of. I wasn't a person taking the medication, but I was a person that was drawing the blood and administering the medication. And we don't know the names of what it is.
Right.
You don't even know what the medication is until afterwards. You just know that this is what we're studying, but this is the type of thing we're studying. So
Yes.
yeah, it's an interesting process going through it. And then, like you said, after the fact, you're like, oh, wait, this is the medication that, that we did this study on and all. So that's a good thing. So I wanted to go back to the different types of studies that you said your office is doing. But the good thing is because we are in Florida and my listeners are everywhere, all worldwide. So all around the world, there is research being done. And I know the IRB is international. So if you are not in the United States and you're concerned about what about over here, what about where I am, is there are those protections there? Those protections are still there. So the IRB is an international review board. So that's not just for the United States. That's for the whole world. Um, and again, they are not a part of any organization, not the CDC, not the FDA, and not the WHO, the World Health Organization, not the group, not the music group. So I just wanted to put that out there as well. Shanae, is there anything else that you wanted to bring up about your clinic or anything?
We are growing. We are expanding, and hopefully next year we will be in our second facility, which will be 10,000 square feet. So we're
Yay.
excited about that. So expansion and growth is always good. So we're working to make our footprint in the Central Florida area.
It's
So
going to be, it's there. This is getting there. It's like a half of a centimeter in the ground, and it's getting pressed down. So that's a good thing. God is
yes,
doing
and
a
a
great
part
thing.
of this expansion will include a phase one unit, which we didn't even get into, but phase one studies are overnight studies where the patients have
Hmm.
to stay overnight in the research facility so that they can be monitored even more closely because with the phase one studies, these mostly are first in human, where the
Mhm.
medication is given for the first time in a human being. So, of course, you have to be watched 24 hours. So,
Yeah, those were
that
the
is
ones I
all a
did.
part of the expansion. So, we're excited and just looking forward to the new opportunities and growth in the area.
Yeah, that's one that I did. We had to enter the area all in an isolation suit, and then when we go into our area, we could take everything off because we couldn't contaminate them. So yeah, that's very interesting. That's
And one
good.
more thing I have to say I am not a physician. So,
Okay, yeah.
I want to put that disclaimer out there. So I own the research site. So I have hired board certified medical doctors, nurses, pharmacists, medical assistants to run the research clinic. So I am a site owner and a director and oversee the operations. But the providers in our offices are board certified medical doctors. We have nurse practitioners, we have PAs, pharmacists, and nurses. So if you see this and say, oh, she's not a doctor, you're correct. I am not. But I have hired these people to protect and make sure that our patients are safe. So I am no different than a medical office that is owned by a private equity. They're not the doctor, but they have hired the pieces to run the medical practice.
Yes, and that is exposure for someone to know that no, you don't have to be a doctor or nurse even to own a clinic. At least not in Florida, you don't. Check your
Correct.
states wherever you are because it may be that way in your state as well. But yes, so she is the owner, operator, director of her research clinic. I'm so happy for her and proud of her for taking that leap of faith and allowing God to lead her and to expand her practice as well, her clinic. So I want to say thank you for being my first interviewee um, and and sharing with us your story on how you got into research, how you got your clinic started, and what all research is and what it means for colors of community. And I hope that we have people calling you in the Florida area, in Central Florida area, but also asking questions to learn more and reaching out to their local research centers to become involved.
Yes.
Because
Thank
we
you
need
so much.
testing to know what works for us.
You're exactly right, Wendy. And it's very important. And that is the message that we are trying to send is that it's safe and it's okay. And we need this to further expand our lives so that we can live longer and be healthier.
Yeah. And that the medication works for us.
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you
Thank you
again.
so much, Wendy, for having me. It's been a pleasure and I've enjoyed this conversation.
Yes. Well, here you are. Thank you for being here. Here it is, everyone. Shanae Wakefield Brown. Let's give her a hand. Yay. Thank you, Shanae. So, once again, thank you for tuning into my podcast. Um, Next week, we'll have someone else coming on. And I just want to say, let us know if you have any questions. Put it in the comments. Give us a like. Share the video with someone and start the conversation. Ask people, did you go to get if you don't have medicine for your disease or your illness, see about a research study. At least you can get the medication for free and get paid for your time while they're trying to figure out what works best for us as a people. All right, y'all. Thanks for listening. Y'all have a great day, okay? Till next time. Toodles.